Love won over prejudice. Have you ever wondered what truly separates a dynasty built on pride from a humble family stitched together by love? Because this story will make you question everything you thought you knew about legacy, bloodlines, and the weight of old money. It's not a fairy tale wrapped in polite smiles and glittering chandeliers. It's a raw, often uncomfortable journey where a wealthy heir chose forbidden love over the cold security of his inheritance. Imagine risking every dollar, every ounce of respect your name ever commanded, just to hold the hand of someone the world said you weren't supposed to love. Sounds reckless, doesn't it? Maybe even foolish. But sometimes the most powerful victories happen far away from marble halls. Right there on a creaky porch where laughter spills into the night and a child's giggles become richer than any trust fund. This isn't just about Monica, the humble maid who dared to dream beyond her station, or David, who defied a powerful family to follow a fragile, scandalous hope. It's about you, because deep down we all want to believe that love can overcome pride, that it can rewrite stories carved in stone for generations. And if that's true for them, maybe it's possible for you too, no matter who's telling you you're not enough. So stay with me. Let's unravel this tale together. Feel every breathless confession, every crushing humiliation, and every sweet, unexpected triumph. Because by the end of this story, you might just find yourself questioning where true wealth really lives, and realizing it was never locked inside a mansion at all. Monica never imagined that crossing the gates of the Crawford estate would feel like stepping into a different universe. The sheer size of the mansion made her breath hitch, marble columns rising like ancient sentinels, chandeliers dripping with crystals that seemed to whisper secrets of old money. As she adjusted her modest coat, the scent of polished wood and imported lilies struck her, a sharp contrast to the simple lavender soap she used that morning. In that moment, she felt every inch the humble maid hired by a wealthy family that wouldn't even bother learning her favorite color. Still, she kept her chin up, clutching her small suitcase tighter. When Charlotte Crawford greeted her, Monica tried not to shrink under the woman's appraising eyes. Charlotte had that effortless elegance, a grace born from generations of tailored privilege. "Jimmy's upstairs," she said, voice clipped, almost bored. Monica nodded, offering a polite smile that wasn't quite returned. As they climbed the grand staircase, Monica's shoes barely made a sound on the plush carpet, but inside her chest, her heart thundered. Would they all look at her this way, like she was an uninvited guest at someone else's grand party? Jimmy, thankfully, was nothing like his mother. When Monica entered the boy's bedroom, she found him hugging a stuffed fox, eyes wide and wary. With a gentle smile, she knelt to his level, introducing herself in a soft, playful whisper. It only took a few silly faces and a whispered secret about imaginary dragons for Jimmy to giggle. That laughter was a tiny victory, a crack in the cold facade of the mansion, reminding Monica why she had accepted the position in the first place. If she could bring a spark to this lonely child, maybe the humiliation she feared would be worth it. It didn't take long for Monica to notice the sideways glances from the other staff. Whispers floated down the hallway like dust motes caught in the sunbeam. She didn't need to catch every word to know they wondered how long this humble maid would last. Some seemed curious, others outright skeptical, as if waiting for her to make a mistake big enough to justify their silent judgment. Monica squared her shoulders and busied herself with Jimmy's schedule, determined to show that against all odds she belonged here, even if just as a caretaker. By mid-afternoon, Monica ventured into the kitchen, hoping for a glass of water to soothe her parched throat. The cook barely acknowledged her, too busy barking orders at the scullery maids. Monica felt invisible, another shadow flitting through the halls. But it was in that small, bustling space she caught her first glimpse of David Crawford. He strolled in casually, laughter lingering from a conversation outside. When his eyes landed on her, Monica felt an unexpected heat crawl up her neck, her hands instinctively smoothing her skirt. David's gaze lingered a beat too long. There was no condescension, no smug curiosity, just a flicker of intrigue. Monica ducked her head, pretending to be engrossed in a speck on the countertop. It was foolish, she scolded herself. What good could come from catching the attention of a Crawford heir? This was a wealthy family steeped in pride and legacy, not a place for forbidden love or even harmless daydreams. Still, her heart betrayed her with a nervous flutter, and she cursed it for being so easily swayed. Later that day, Monica found herself humming as she tucked Jimmy in for his nap. The little boy clutched her hand with sleepy trust, and she realized how quickly affection could grow in a house starved of warmth. As she lingered by his bed, the faint echo of footsteps made her look up. David stood at the door, leaning against the frame with an unreadable expression. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a dangerous curiosity that neither dared name. Monica's throat tightened. Was this how it started, with stolen glances in dim hallways? That night, as Monica settled into her small quarters, she replayed every moment in her mind. The opulence of the house, the disdain in Charlotte's eyes, Jimmy's innocent laughter, and David's lingering stare. She traced the quilt beneath her fingers, feeling each stitch like a heartbeat. The idea of becoming entangled with this family beyond her duties both thrilled and terrified her. Wasn't it enough that she'd already stepped into their gilded world? Must she risk more than her pride? She closed her eyes, hoping sleep would silence the questions. Outside her window, the moonlight draped the estate in silver, making it look almost tender. Monica wondered what secrets these walls had witnessed. How many maids before her had nursed crushed hopes under these same beams? A soft breeze carried the scent of roses, and she allowed herself a fleeting fantasy. What if love could truly bloom in such a place? What if a humble maid could mean more than a silent shadow in the life of a Crawford? The thought made her chest ache in a way that was both painful and sweet. But Monica quickly pushed those dangerous musings aside. After all, new beginnings often wore masks, tempting you to forget where you came from and how easily a dream could turn into disgrace. And though she tried to convince herself it was only foolishness, some part of her couldn't help but wonder, was the universe already setting the stage for something far more complicated than either of them could predict? It started so quietly that Monica hardly noticed the shift. David began showing up wherever Jimmy happened to be, whether it was the sunlit garden where Monica played pretend pirates with the boy, or the cozy library where Jimmy practiced shaky letters under her gentle guidance. At first, Monica told herself it was only coincidence. After all, this was David's home. But each time their eyes met across a room, something tender and forbidden pulsed between them, whispering promises neither was ready to name. One morning, as Monica tied Jimmy's shoelaces on the grand staircase, David appeared at the top landing, watching them with a faint smile. The boy ran to his uncle, wrapping little arms around David's leg. "Uncle David, come play!" he squealed. David chuckled, ruffling Ginny's hair before glancing at Monica with an expression that held a question she didn't dare answer. It was so simple, just a look shared over a child's giggle, yet Monica's heart stuttered like it had forgotten how to keep steady. They began exchanging soft words in passing, a casual comment about the weather, a quiet laugh over Jimmy's mischievous streak. Monica was hyper-aware of every stolen moment, of how David seemed to genuinely listen when she spoke, as if her thoughts were beneath the Crawford legacy. Against all odds, she felt seen. In a house built on wealth and unspoken rules, that alone felt dangerously precious. Still, each interaction left her nerves frayed, torn between longing and dread of discovery. One afternoon, while Monica was kneeling by a flower bed helping Jimmy count bees, David wandered over, hands in pockets. "He's happier since you came, you know," David said, voice low. Monica looked up, caught off guard by the softness in his tone. "You've brought life back to this place." She blushed, fumbling with the hem of her apron. Compliments weren't something she knew how to hold. They slipped through her fingers like water, leaving behind an ache that was somehow both humiliation and hope. Sometimes, when Ginny napped, Monica would steal a moment on the stone bench beneath the old oak tree. One day, David found her there, eyes closed, breathing in the jasmine on the breeze. "Stealing a bit of peace?" he teased, sitting beside her without invitation. Monica's laugh was startled, almost scandalized. "I suppose so." Their shoulders brushed, and that single point of contact felt as electric as a whispered secret. Neither moved away. From then on, little kindnesses grew like ivy between them. David would bring her a cup of tea on cooler afternoons, or a pause to ask about her family back home. Monica found herself sharing small truths she hadn't voiced in years, memories of her mother's humming in the kitchen, of siblings who believe she'd one day marry a kind carpenter, not become tangled in the lives of a wealthy family. Each confession was another fragile stitch binding them together. Sometimes Monica caught herself watching David as he paced the gardens on business calls. The way frustration tightened his jaw, or how his hands sliced the air, told her more than any words. Once, catching her gaze, he made a playful face that startled a laugh from her. Just like that, the tension broke, replaced by something impossibly tender. Wasn't it strange how humiliation could so quickly twist into affection when someone chose to meet you with warmth instead of scorn? At night, alone in her small bed, Monica replayed every glance, every hushed laugh. She knew better than to nurture forbidden love. She was a humble maid, after all, someone whose entire world could be dismantled by a careless rumor. And yet, in the echoing silence of her room, she wondered if David's lingering looks meant he was also battling something dangerous inside his chest. Perhaps he too stood at the edge of a cliff neither dared jump from. Sometimes Monica questioned if this delicate bond was only her desperate imagination, trying to fill the lonely gaps of her life. But then David would look at her with eyes that promised unspoken things, or Jimmy would giggle and pull them both into an embrace that felt suspiciously like family. In those moments, Monica thought maybe there was something real blossoming, something that could overcome pride and money, if only they were brave enough. And so, these small kindnesses turned into subtle connections, fragile yet persistent. They wove around Monica's heart like a vine, squeezing tight with equal parts dread and delicious possibility. But in a house haunted by old prejudices and ironclad expectations, even the gentlest affections carried the seeds of scandal, waiting for the right cruel moment to burst into something far harder to contain. Margaret Crawford was a woman who measured worth by lineage and polished shoes. From her vantage point at the breakfast table, she surveyed her empire daily, believing it immune to scandal. But even she couldn't ignore how her son's eyes seemed to light differently since the humble maid arrived. Margaret noticed every stolen glance, every hushed laugh that dared flow through their grand halls. The realization landed like a sour stone in her gut, forbidden love brewing under her very roof, threatening the pristine legacy she had fought so viciously to protect. It began with subtle comments, as barbed as they were elegant. "A maid should know her place," Margaret would remark over tea, her voice smooth as silk yet twice as cutting. Monica, pouring coffee, would flinch inwardly, though she kept her chin lifted. Those words weren't just idle musings, they were warnings. David watched these interactions with a storm brewing behind his calm facade, his hand often tightening around his cup until his knuckles blanched. Margaret's disdain wasn't limited to Monica alone. At luncheons with other society matrons, she let slip carefully curated anecdotes. It's charming, really, how David takes an interest in the staff's well-being, shows a certain noblesse oblige. The women tittered behind manicured hands, delighting in the humiliation they imagined Monica must feel. In truth, Margaret was planting seeds of scandal early, ensuring that should this affair ever dare bloom, it would already be smothered under the weight of communal scorn. For Monica, the weight of Margaret's coldness grew heavier by the day. The wealthy family she worked for wielded their silent power like a blade, cutting at her confidence with each dismissive glance. Still, Monica chose love over money's protection, refused to cower entirely, though sometimes it took every shred of courage she possessed. Her nights were spent replaying every icy encounter, heart aching with the realization that no matter how tender David's gaze, his mother would always see her as nothing more than a stain on fine upholstery. David wasn't blind to his mother's cruelty. One evening, finding Monica alone by the kitchen doorway, tears threatening to spill, he reached for her hand. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice rough. "For all of it. For her." Monica tried to pull away, insisting she was fine, but the way he held on made her throat tighten. That night, he cried later in his room, silent tears for the impossible position love had placed them in. How could something so pure ignite such family humiliation. It was Jimmy who often served as an innocent bridge. Oblivious to adult tensions, he would run up to Monica with drawings or small bouquets of crushed daisies, tugging her toward David whenever possible. Margaret watched these small gatherings with thinly veiled disgust, her lips pinched, eyes glittering like cold gems. "Don't encourage familiarity," she snapped at Jimmy once, startling him into tears. Monica gathered the boy into her arms, glaring back at Margaret with a fierceness that surprised even her. Margaret's tactics shifted next to whispers with the staff, quiet encouragements to watch Monica more closely, to report any impropriety. The house, already echoing with old secrets, seemed to lean in on Monica, walls whispering her inadequacy. Yet despite the humiliation, she found small rebellions, holding David's gaze a heartbeat too long, brushing past him in hallways just close enough to feel the warmth of his sleeve. Each stolen moment a defiance, a silent promise that against all odds, their hearts refused to bend. One afternoon, Monica overheard Margaret speaking on the phone in the sitting room. "I won't allow some maid to dismantle what generations built. I'll see to it personally." Her voice was low, but the venom was unmistakable. Monica backed away, pulse racing. In that instant, the enormity of what they were up against hit her like a blow. This wasn't just an overprotective mother. This was a matriarch, prepared to crush anything that threatened her family justice, even if it meant breaking her own son. That night, Monica lay awake, moonlight spilling across her quilt in fractured silver. She wondered if love could truly overcome pride so deeply rooted, or if they were chasing a dream destined to rot under Margaret's relentless scrutiny. The scent of roses drifted through her window again, cruel in its softness, reminding her how beauty could mask thorns. Was it foolish to hope for a new beginning here? Or was hope the only vengeance a maid like her could ever wield? Margaret continued her quiet campaign, wrapping herself in pearls and composure while sowing silent war. Yet beneath the polished cruelty, even she couldn't entirely smother the subtle shifts. A gentle hand on Monica's shoulder from David, Jimmy's giggles that united them all if only for a heartbeat. And in those fragile seconds, something unsettled stirred, hinting that this battle of legacy versus love was only beginning to unravel in ways none of them could yet foresee. It was a late afternoon when the sun dipped low enough to cast long, golden fingers through the glass of the Crawford greenhouse. Monica often brought Jimmy there to marvel at the strange orchids and buzzing bees, but today she found herself alone, needing a breath of air that didn't carry Margaret's disdain. She stood among towering ferns, eyes closed, trying to steady her heart. The sweetness of ripening lemons mixed with damp earth, grounding her in a way the cold marble halls never could. David discovered her there quite by accident, or so he claimed later, though Monica suspected he wandered more aimlessly these days than a wealthy heir ever should. "Hiding from the world?" he asked, his voice a soft intrusion into her fragile calm. Monica startled, nearly dropping the delicate frond she'd been toying with. "Just catching my breath," she managed. It sounded weak even to her own ears, like someone trying too hard to deny how close they stood to the edge of something reckless. He moved closer, enough that she could see the flecks of green in his otherwise dark eyes. "You look sad," David observed quietly. Monica shook her head, laughter bubbling up that was more broken than amused. "Sad? No. Just reminded of my place here." The words slipped out unbidden, sharp with humiliation. It was the first time she dared voice even a fraction of what gnawed at her each night when sleep refused to come. David's brow furrowed, hand reaching out before pulling back awkwardly, as if still learning where it was acceptable to touch her. "I don't want you to feel that way," he admitted. "Like you're somehow less." Monica's chest tightened. In a house built on generations of prejudice, how could she not? She turned away, afraid her eyes might betray just how deeply those silent wounds ran. This was forbidden love, yes, but it was also raw and uninvited, clawing at places she'd long buried. "Monica," he whispered, voice so gentle it nearly broke her. She didn't answer, couldn't, when his hand finally settled on her shoulder. Warm and hesitant, a shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with the draft seeping through the glass panes. "Look at me," David urged, and against every piece of sense she possessed, she did. What she found there wasn't pity. It was something achingly close to reverence, and that terrified her far more than Margaret ever could. He drew a shaky breath. "I think about you more than I should," David confessed, each word rough as gravel. "Not just here, not just as Jimmy's nanny, but everywhere, always." Monica's lips parted, heart thrashing painfully against her ribs. She wanted to protest, to remind him that he was a Crawford, that his wealthy family would never accept this. But when she opened her mouth, nothing came. Instead, tears blurred her vision, traitorous in how easily they betrayed her secret longings. David reached up, wiping a single tear with his thumb. "I see you, Monica. Not your station, not the color of your skin. You. Your laughter with Jimmy. The way you stand a little taller even when my mother tries to cut you down. I've never met anyone braver." She let out a strangled sob, one that held years of swallowing pride just to survive. He pulled her close then, as if the world had decided for them that the distance was no longer worth maintaining. In that stolen embrace, everything else fell away. There were no looming chandeliers or cold hallways, no whispered warnings of scandal or family justice to be served. Just two people trembling in a humid garden, hearts beating so wildly they seemed to echo off the glass. When they finally pulled back, Monica searched his face for regret and found none, only a fragile kind of joy that left her equally terrified and elated. David brushed his forehead against hers. "Say you feel it too," he pleaded, voice raw. Monica wanted to deny it, to protect them both from the storm surely brewing. But she was tired of pretending her heart didn't race at his every look. "I do," she whispered. "God help me, I do." In that instant, something shifted irrevocably between them. An unspoken vow that against all odds, they would try to carve out a new beginning, even if it meant daring the wrath of an empire built to keep them apart. They stood there longer than was wise, clinging to a fragile moment that felt as dangerous as it was inevitable. And though Monica's mind screamed of consequences, humiliation, vengeance from a maid who dared dream, the looming shadow of Margaret's cold eyes, her soul clung to the warmth of David's hands on hers, already bracing for what storms might come crashing through next. The mansion always had its share of secrets, but once Monica and David crossed that invisible line, the very walls seemed to lean in closer, hungry for gossip. It began with hushed conversations in the laundry rooms, laughter that died when Monica entered. The other maids would glance at each other knowingly, eyes wide with the thrill of having something so delicious to whisper about. In a house ruled by legacy, a wealthy heir tangled up with a humble maid was forbidden love at its ripest, ripe enough to rot under too much scrutiny. One evening, as Monica walked Jimmy back to his room after supper, she caught snippets of two footmen chatting near the staircase. "She'll trap him, mark my words," one sneered. "Nothing like a pretty face and crocodile tears to snare family money." Monica felt her cheeks burn, not with shame, but with a humiliation that clawed under her skin. She kept her head high for Jimmy's sake, but inside, her heart cracked in tiny, almost imperceptible ways. It didn't take long for the whispers to reach Margaret's ears. The matriarch had always carried herself like scandal was beneath her, until it threatened her own. One morning over breakfast, she fixed David with an icy smile, her teacup poised elegantly. "The staff is quite talkative these days. I'd hate to think they're spreading stories that might tarnish your future." Her tone was deceptively sweet, each word laced with venom. David's jaw tightened, the silver fork in his hand bending just slightly under the pressure. Later that afternoon, Monica was summoned to the grand salon, heart hammering against her ribs. Margaret sat by the window in a flood of soft light that did nothing to soften her steely gaze. "Do you know why you're here?" she asked, voice cool as polished marble. Monica clasped her hands to keep them from trembling. "No, ma'am." Margaret's smile was almost pitying. "You're clever enough to guess. My son has a generous heart. It would be tragic if someone mistook that for genuine affection." The words sliced sharper than any knife. Monica tried to steady her breathing, but it felt like the room had shrunk around her. "I would never presume," she began, but Margaret waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, I'm sure you wouldn't. Still, let's be clear. You're here to care for Jimmy. Anything else is an insult to this family's dignity, to generations who built this house from more than whispers and longing looks with servants. The humiliation was complete, yet Monica found herself lifting her chin all the same. David walked in halfway through the exchange, his expression darkening as he took in his mother's condescending poise and Monica's tear-red eyes. "Mother, enough," he snapped. Margaret's eyebrow arched delicately. "Enough? I'm trying to protect you, darling. You're so quick to confuse infatuation with something lasting." She cried. You comforted her. "Of course it feels dramatic, but one day you'll thank me." Her words dripped poison masked as maternal concern. Monica couldn't bear it. She turned to leave, but David caught her wrist gently, pulling her back. "I won't stand here and let you tear her down," he told Margaret, voice low and dangerous. "This is more than your legacy, Mother. It's my life." Monica tried to protest, whispering his name in a plea for caution, but he only held her tighter. Margaret's eyes narrowed, her composure cracking for the first time. "So this is the humiliation you bring to our door?" she hissed. The scandal was officially born that day. By evening, the entire household buzzed with new energy, half horror, half delight. Monica couldn't step into a room without feeling the weight of a dozen curious eyes. Footsteps seemed to follow her wherever she went, conversations breaking off sharply as soon as she drew near. Even Jimmy noticed, clinging to her skirts more often, asking why everyone was acting funny. Against all odds, Monica tried to smile for him, though inside she felt as fragile as spun glass. At one point, Monica asked, "Are you sure about this? About me? Because love like ours doesn't come with guarantees, only battles." David smiled, weary but resolute. "Then let's keep fighting. I chose you once, I'll choose you 1,000 times, even if it means losing every cent tied to the Crawford name." In that cramped little kitchen, they sealed old promises with new kisses, hearts finally moving in rhythm instead of staggering under the weight of regret. Later, as they lay tangled together on a narrow bed, moonlight painting silver patterns across their skin, Monica whispered, "Do you ever wonder how different this might have been if your family saw me the way you do?" David pressed his lips to her forehead. "Maybe. But then again, maybe the struggle makes what we have mean more. We overcame pride, chose love over money, and that makes every scar worth it." Outside, the city exhaled around them, unaware it bore witness to a miracle of quiet, stubborn devotion. But even in this fragile peace, they both sensed the world beyond that small room still turning, still waiting to test the edges of their hard-won happiness. And though neither voiced it, the question hung between them like a breath held too long. Would love continue to conquer prejudice? Or with the next trial already gathering like thunder on the horizon? The wedding was nothing like the lavish ceremonies etched into Crawford history books. Instead of gilded invitations and orchestras, Monica and David stood hand in hand in a tiny chapel that smelled faintly of old wood and candle wax. The priest's voice cracked with age, and only Charlotte, Ginny, and a handful of loyal staff from the mansion gathered to witness the vows. But for all its simplicity, the moment felt holy, two souls choosing each other against all odds, with no safety nets of family wealth or inherited power. Monica wore a modest ivory dress borrowed from a neighbor, its lace slightly yellowed, but perfect in its honest elegance. David had sold a prize watch, an heirloom once meant to symbolize Crawford legacy, to pay for the rings. As he slicked hers onto her trembling finger, their eyes met and something unspoken passed between them. An understanding that love had asked them to pay dearly, and they'd both gladly emptied their pockets and hearts for the chance. After the ceremony, they shared a quiet meal at Charlotte's home. Jimmy climbed onto Monica's lap, chattering about how he couldn't wait to visit their new house and pick flowers for her. David laughed, ruffling the boy's hair, his chest swelling with a pride deeper than anything born from stock portfolios or family estates. In that tiny dining room, surrounded by mismatched dishes and the scent of roasting chicken, they found a joy no ballroom could replicate. Their cottage sat on the edge of town, a humble structure with peeling paint and a yard stubbornly overtaken by wild daisies. Monica adored it instantly. She spent afternoons planting rosemary and lavender along the fence, while David repaired loose shingles on the roof. Each small improvement felt like a brick laid in the foundation of a life truly their own, far from chandeliers that dripped not just crystals, but expectations neither of them could ever meet. Neighbors were curious at first. A wealthy family son playing handyman, his dark-skinned bride laughing beside him, hands dirty with soil. Whispers floated through the market square, some tinged with old prejudice, others soft with reluctant admiration. Monica and David ignored it all. They'd lived through worse than gossip. In their little home, they carved out a sanctuary built on shared secrets and late-night laughter, proving every day that a humble maid and a Crawford heir could rewrite destiny together. Sometimes Margaret's absence stung. Months passed before she appeared on their doorstep, face carefully composed. Monica held her breath as David opened the door. For a long moment, mother and son simply looked at each other. Then Margaret's eyes flicked to Monica, then to Jimmy, tugging excitedly at her skirts. Without a word, she stepped inside, accepting a cup of tea Monica offered with trembling hands. No grand apologies were spoken, no tears shed, just a fragile truce sealed over polite sips and cautious questions about the garden. As the sun dipped behind their little house that evening, David stood with Monica on the porch, arm wrapped tight around her waist. "You see that?" he whispered. "That's our family now. Not perfect, not what the Crawfords planned, but ours." Monica leaned her head on his shoulder, heart swelling with a fierce protectiveness. After all the humiliation, the whispered scandals, the constant need to overcome pride, this was their new beginning. A victory quiet enough to keep, yet loud enough to echo through every choice they made together. They still had days when old wounds bled. Monica sometimes woke from nightmares where Margaret tore Jimmy from her arms, accusing her of tainting the Crawford line. Other nights, David lay awake, fearing the fragile peace with his mother might shatter at the slightest misstep. But in those moments, they reached for each other, finding solace in heartbeats that promised again and again that they would face whatever came as one. It was never a fairy tale. The cottage roof still leaked in heavy storms, bills sometimes stacked higher than their modest income could stretch. Yet each hardship only wove them closer. They laughed over burnt suppers, danced barefoot on the porch to music crackling through an old radio, and held hands at sunrise as if drawing courage from the dawn. Their story was a testament to choosing love over money, to believing that family justice didn't always come in courtrooms, but sometimes simply in two people standing defiant together. Still, even as they found this imperfect happiness, something lingered. An unspoken sense that the world beyond their little fence wasn't quite done testing how far their hearts could bend before breaking. And as Monica watched David lift Jimmy high into the twilight, laughter spilling into the evening air, she wondered what new trials waited just past the horizon, sharpening themselves in secret. Years drifted by in a gentle, steady rhythm. Seasons painted their small cottage in shifting palettes, lavender sprouting defiantly each spring, golden leaves gathering in tender drifts by autumn. Inside, the walls absorbed laughter, soft arguments that ended in quiet apologies, and countless whispered dreams shared under patchwork quilts. For Monica and David, life had become a tapestry, woven from simple moments that together felt grander than any Crawford gala. Their daughter, Lily, arrived on a warm June evening, her first cries echoing through the tiny house like a promise fulfilled. Monica held her close, tears streaming freely as David pressed kisses to both their foreheads, overcome by a joy too large to fit inside his chest. This humble maid and once tortured heir had built something astonishing. Not just a home, but a legacy born of courage, not coin. Even the memory of Margaret's icy disdain seemed to melt a little at the sight of Lily's tiny fists waving determinedly at the world. Surprisingly, it was Margaret herself who began visiting more often. At first, she sat stiffly on their modest sofa, hands folded so tightly her knuckles paled. But Lily had a way of disarming even the coldest hearts. One afternoon, the baby crawled into Margaret's lap unbidden, babbling nonsense that ended in a gummy smile. Something fragile cracked in the older woman's eyes. From then on, she would bring small gifts, delicate dresses, books from the Crawford Library, her own quiet gestures toward a family justice long denied. David watched these tentative bonds form with a cautious hope. He never forgot the humiliation his mother once rained down upon Monica, nor how fiercely they'd had to overcome pride to stand where they were now. Still, seeing Margaret gently bounce Lily on her knee, whispering old nursery rhymes, hinted that perhaps even the most stubborn legacies could soften under the relentless press of innocent love. It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. Monica found herself marveling at how easily Lily accepted this patchwork family. The little girl would toddle between her parents, then plop herself at Margaret's feet with complete trust. Watching that, Monica felt a vindication deeper than any courtroom recognition of paternity or formal family tree could ever offer. This was vengeance of the maid in its most beautiful form, turning scorn into belonging, fear into laughter that danced around every corner of their once quiet cottage. There were still hard days, bills occasionally stacked high, illness swept through with cruel efficiency, and old townsfolk sometimes cast looks that spoke volumes about forbidden love that dared thrive openly. But each time the world tried to remind Monica of where it thought she belonged, David's hand would find hers, squeezing until the doubts quieted. Against all odds, they stood together, a living rebuke to every whispered prediction of ruin. On rainy afternoons, they would pile onto the couch, Lily tucked between them as Monica read stories aloud. David often watched them more than he listened, a soft smile playing at his lips. In those quiet hours, he realized wealth had never meant sprawling estates or gilded hallways. It was right there in the way Monica's voice rose and fell, in Lily's delighted giggles, in the scent of bread baking while storms rattled the shutters. Sometimes, when Monica caught David staring, she'd tease him with a playful nudge. "Regretting giving up all that fancy silver yet?" He'd laugh, shaking his head, pulling her close. Not for a second. Love won over prejudice, and look what it gave us instead. Their kisses then were slow, unhurried, tasting of shared triumph and tender resignation to a future still uncertain, but undeniably theirs. As Lily grew, she often asked about the grand house in town where her cousins lived, why they didn't visit more. Monica would exchange a look with David, answering carefully, "Because some hearts take longer to learn what really matters." Lily accepted this with the solemn wisdom only children possessed, then darted off to chase fireflies, her laughter trailing like starlight behind her. Watching her, Monica felt the last of her old wounds begin to knit closed. Yet even in this healing, life held its breath, ready to test them again someday, through fresh trials or unexpected joys. Monica couldn't know what waited beyond tomorrow, but as David's arm wrapped around her shoulders and Lily's tiny hand slipped into hers, she understood that whatever storms came, they'd face them together, drawing strength from every scar, every victory, every fragile hope that had led them here. So when you step back and look at their journey, Monica's quiet courage, David's fierce defiance, Margaret's grudging softening, doesn't it all feel like a reminder that life rarely fits into neat little boxes of right and wrong? Maybe true family justice isn't about courtrooms or pedigrees. Maybe it's found right there in the messy way two people choose each other over and over again, even when the world hands them every reason to walk away. It's almost poetic, isn't it? How a forbidden love, born out of whispered scandals and defiant heartbeats, could end up building something stronger than all the Crawford money combined. Love overcame pride, prejudice lost its grip, and what remained was a home filled with laughter and tiny feet racing down hallways. Proof that sometimes vengeance comes not through revenge, but through living well. But tell me, if you were in David's shoes, would you have walked away from everything just to hold the hand of someone your family despised? Or if you were Monica, would you have dared to stay when humiliation lurked around every polished corner? I'd love to know. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your heart, your stories. Because maybe there's a bit of Monica or David in all of us, waiting to be brave. And hey, if stories like this one, raw, emotional, tangled up in choices that could break or remake a life, speak to something deep inside you, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell. There are so many more tales waiting that just might challenge the way you see love, legacy, and what it truly means to belong.